Romulan ships had just sliced effortlessly through Earth's defenses and now loomed in a low orbit, ready to incinerate the primitive human cities below, when suddenly all hell broke loose. Draco, the Romulan commander, stared in disbelief at his view screen as swarms of advanced fighter drones and devastating energy weapons burst forth from the defenseless planet, shredding his fleet to ribbons in seconds flat. The invading ships fled in disarray, their crews stunned at the impossible power Earth had just unleashed. In the chaotic aftermath, Lieutenant Commander Nicholas Cox was hailed as a hero for leading the drone squadrons that humiliated the feared Romulans. But while Earth celebrated, a shadowy galactic council of alien races convened in secret, desperate to unravel how their centuries-old conspiracy to keep humans technologically crippled had failed so spectacularly. As accusations flew, Zaxor, an elder Vulcan, grimly revealed the truth. Some on the council had long admired humanity's potential and had been aiding their progress, knowing that unshackled human ingenuity would one day upend the galaxy's fragile balance of power. The Romulan defeat exposed not just the astonishing level of Earth's weapons tech, but a web of ancient secrets poised to plunge the galaxy into chaos and war. In a universe where the real reason for banning human weapons was now laid bare, one thing became crystal clear. The future of every spacefaring race hinged on their next move regarding the emboldened and unleashed Terrans. The age of underestimating and infantilizing humanity was over. What came next would shake the very foundations of a galaxy that had foolishly believed it could keep mankind weak and contained forever. In a dimly lit chamber deep within the Vulcan Science Academy, Suvak and his team pored over the data they had extracted from the Romulan research facility. The revelations were even more disturbing than they had anticipated. Not only did the Romulans know about Earth's advanced weapons capabilities, but they had been actively working to sabotage human progress and sow discord among the Galactic Council races. "This goes deeper than we ever imagined," Suvak said grimly, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The Romulans have been manipulating events for decades, possibly centuries. Their goal seems to be to keep the other races divided and fearful of humanity's potential." Talara, the brilliant Vulcan scientist, nodded in agreement. "The data clearly shows a pattern of Romulan interference and misinformation. They've been seeding false intelligence and stoking tensions between the council members, all while secretly monitoring and attempting to hinder Earth's technological development." As the team continued to analyze the information, a sudden alert flashed across their screens. The Andorian contingent of the Council had just issued an emergency summons, calling for an immediate session to address the growing crisis. Light years away, Captain Nicholas Cox and his newly formed Joint Task Force were engaged in a tense standoff with the retreating Klingon warship. The advanced human stealth ship that had come to their aid hovered nearby, its sleek black hull barely visible against the starry backdrop. "Captain, we're being hailed by the Klingon vessel," the communications officer reported, her voice tense with anticipation. Cox straightened in his chair, his teeth clenched. "On screen." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred and scowling face of the Klingon commander. "You have won this battle, human," the Klingon growled, his voice dripping with barely held back rage. "But do not think this is over. The Klingon Empire will not stand idly by while your kind upsets the balance of power in the galaxy." Cox met the Klingon's gaze unflinchingly. "We seek no war with the Klingon Empire, or anyone else," he said calmly. "Earth desires only to take its rightful place among the stars, as an equal partner in the galactic community." The Klingon commander sneered, his eyes gleaming with hostility. "We shall see, human. We shall see." With that, the transmission abruptly ended, and the Klingon ship jumped to warp, vanishing into the vast expanse of space. As the task force began to stand down from battle stations, Thaxos, the grizzled Andorian warrior, turned to Cox with a grim expression. "This is only the beginning, Captain," he warned. "The Klingons will not be the last to challenge Earth's ascendancy. We must be prepared for the battles to come." Cox nodded solemnly, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the view screen. "I know, Thaxos, but we will face them together, as a united front. Earth and our allies will stand strong against any threat." Back on Vulcan, The Galactic Council had convened in an atmosphere of tense anticipation. The shocking revelations about the Romulan conspiracy had sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates, and heated debates erupted on all sides. In the midst of the chaos, Zaxor, the elder Vulcan who had long championed humanity's cause, rose to address the council. "My fellow delegates," he began, his voice calm and measured, "the time for secrecy and mistrust is over. We must confront the truth that has been hidden from us for so long." As Zaxor spoke, the transmission from the Galactic Resistance suddenly filled the screens around the chamber. The human ambassador's words hung in the air, a powerful call for unity and cooperation in the face of the challenges ahead. In the aftermath of the transmission, the council chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, some raised in anger, others in cautious support. Amidst the tumult, Zaxor caught the eye of his Andorian ally across the room. With a subtle nod, the two slipped away, their departure unnoticed in the commotion. As they walked briskly through the winding corridors of the Vulcan Science Academy, Zaxor's communicator chimed softly. He glanced down at the device, a look of dogged drive on his face. "It's time," he said quietly, quickening his pace. "The Resistance is about to make its final move. We must be ready." And with that, Zaxor and his ally stepped through a hidden doorway, ready to embark on the next phase of their long and perilous journey to reshape the galaxy. Captain Nicholas Cox's fingers drummed on the armrest of his command chair as he surveyed the bridge of the USS Vanguard. The Joint Human-Alien Task Force had been patrolling the outer reaches of Earth's sphere of influence for days, tensions high in the wake of the Romulan attack. A sharp beep cut through the low hum of the bridge. "Captain, incoming transmission," Lieutenant Thaxos reported, his antennae twitching. "It's heavily encrypted." Cox leaned forward. "Source?" "Unknown, sir, but the encryption, it's unlike anything I've seen." "On screen," Cox ordered, his voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Suvak, the Vulcan scientist. His eyes darted side to side, as if checking for unseen observers. "Captain Cox," Suvak began, his voice low and urgent. "What I'm about to tell you must not leave this channel. The Romulan attack was merely the tip of the iceberg. We've uncovered evidence of a far-reaching plot to destabilize the Galactic Council and keep humanity suppressed." Cox's eyes widened as Suvak laid out the details of the Romulan conspiracy, including the existence of a secretive resistance movement working to counter their efforts. As the transmission ended, another comm channel opened. This time, it was Zaxor, the elder Vulcan. "Captain, time is of the essence. We need concrete evidence to sway the undecided council members. There's an outpost near the Romulan neutral zone where you might intercept vital communications. But be warned, this mission is unauthorized and extremely dangerous." Cox's mind focused in dedication. "Understood. We're on it." Hours later, the Vanguard dropped out of warp near a desolate planetoid, its sensors scanning for Romulan transmissions. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, acutely aware of their exposed position. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Multiple contacts," Thaxos shouted. "Romulan ships decloaking off our port bow." The view screen lit up with the sight of 3 Romulan warbirds, their disruptor banks glowing ominously. "Evasive maneuvers," Cox barked. "Shields up, weapons hot." The Vanguard banked hard, narrowly avoiding the first barrage of disruptor fire. But as the battle raged on, it became clear they were outgunned and outnumbered. "Hull integrity at 62% and falling," reported the tactical officer, her voice strained. Talara, the Vulcan science officer, spoke up. "Captain, I have an idea. There's a nebula 0.3 light-years from our position. If we can lure the Romulans inside, the ionized gas could disrupt their sensors and give us an advantage." Cox nodded sharply. "Do it! Helm, set course for that nebula! Full impulse!" The Vanguard surged forward, the Romulan ships in hot pursuit. As they entered the swirling clouds of the nebula, visibility dropped to near zero. "All stop," Cox ordered. "Power down non-essential systems. Let's play dead and see if we can't turn the tables on our Romulan friends." Minutes ticked by in tense silence. Then a Romulan warbird loomed out of the mist, passing dangerously close to the Vanguard's position. "Now!" Cox shouted. The Vanguard roared to life, unleashing a devastating volley of phaser fire at point-blank range. The Romulan ship's shields buckled under the assault, its hull rupturing in a brilliant explosion. Taking advantage of the confusion, Cox ordered a series of unorthodox maneuvers, using the nebula's dense pockets of gas as cover. Korg, the Klingon tactical officer, grinned fiercely as he coordinated their attack pattern. When the Vanguard finally emerged from the nebula, 2 Romulan ships lay in ruins behind them. The third limped away, trailing plasma and debris. "Plot a course back to Earth, maximum warp," Cox commanded, allowing himself a small smile of victory. "We've got some evidence to deliver." But as the Vanguard streaked through space, events were unfolding elsewhere that would soon plunge the galaxy into all-out war. The Vanguard dropped out of warp near Earth, the planet's blue orb filling the view screen. Cox's momentary relief at returning home vanished as he processed the scene before him. "My God," he breathed, watching as hundreds of Klingon and Romulan warships swarmed the planet. Before Cox could issue orders, the ship's comm system crackled to life. Zaxor's face appeared, his usually stoic features etched with urgency. "Captain Cox, there's no time to explain. Broadcast this message on all subspace channels, now!" Without hesitation, Cox nodded to his communications officer. Seconds later, Zaxor's voice echoed across the bridge. "Attention all Earth vessels and civilian transports. This is a Priority 1 evacuation order. Proceed immediately to the following coordinates." As the message played out, the view screen lit up with new contacts. Sleek, unfamiliar ships emerged from warp in staggering numbers. "Sir, I'm reading Delton and Axanar energy signatures," Talara reported, her eyebrows raised in surprise. Cox watched in awe as the new arrivals began methodically beaming up humans from the planet's surface. The sheer scale of the operation was breathtaking. "How many?" Cox asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Talara's fingers flew over her console. "At current rates, over 50 million, Captain." The bridge fell silent, the enormity of what they were witnessing sinking in. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Klingon Romulan fleet incoming!" Thaxo shouted. Cox's mind raced. They were vastly outnumbered, but maybe... "All ships, this is Captain Cox. Initiate hit-and-run protocol Omega. Use the Delton wormholes for cover. Let's give our people time to escape." The Vanguard surged forward, its advanced drones launching in swarms. They weaved between the lumbering enemy capital ships, their pinpoint strikes causing disproportionate damage. On the bridge of the Romulan flagship, Sub-Commander Tal snarled in frustration. "Where are they? How could millions simply vanish?" His tactical officer shook his head. "Unknown, sir. Our scans show no trace." The ship rocked violently as a barrage of fire from Cox's task force slammed into their shields. "Return fire!" Tal roared, but the nimble Earth ships had already vanished into another wormhole. Light years away in the chambers of the Galactic Council, Zaxor strode purposefully to the center of the room. The assembled delegates fell silent as he held up a data crystal. "Esteemed colleagues, I have irrefutable proof that humanity has demonstrated the ability to resist total defeat, even in the face of overwhelming odds. I move that we grant them full membership in the galactic community, effective immediately." Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. The Andorian ambassador leapt to his feet. "This is outrageous! We cannot simply—" Zaxor cut him off. "Consider carefully the consequences of your next words, Ambassador. The Delton bloc now stands with humanity. Are you prepared for open conflict with them as well?" A tense silence fell over the room. Finally, the Vulcan High Minister spoke. "We will put it to a vote." Back on Earth, the situation had devolved into chaos. Frustrated by their inability to locate the missing humans, the Klingon-Romulan fleet had begun indiscriminately bombarding the planet's surface. Cox gritted his teeth as he watched another city vanish in a sea of fire. "We can't keep this up forever," he muttered. As if in answer to his thoughts, space seemed to ripple and tear. A massive armada of ships materialized, Vulcan, Andorian, and more. All Allied ships, this is Admiral T'Pol of Vulcan High Command. We stand with humanity. Engage the enemy. The two fleets clashed in a titanic struggle, energy weapons and torpedoes crisscrossing the void. On the planet below, Isaac Novak led a counterattack against Klingon ground forces, the humans bolstered by Deltan troops wielding devastating handheld phasers. Aboard the Vanguard, Cox's tactical display showed the tide of battle slowly turning in their favor. But victory would come at a terrible cost. Sub-Commander Tal, his ship in flames around him, targeted the Vulcan flagship in a final suicidal charge. "For the Empire!" he screamed. Cox saw the Romulan vessel on a collision course. "T'Pol, evade!" But it was too late. The ships were too close. There wasn't time. A blur of motion caught Cox's eye. A single fighter, piloted by Thaxos, streaked towards the Romulan ship. "For Earth!" Thaxos' voice crackled over the comm. His fighter slammed into the Romulan vessel, throwing it off course just enough. Allied fire tore the enemy flagship apart, but not before a final barrage struck the Vulcan ship. As the remnants of the Klingon-Romulan fleet retreated in disarray, Cox received a priority message from T'Pol's ship. He found Talara in the medical bay, her body broken, but her eyes still fierce. "We did it," Cox said softly, taking her hand. Talara nodded weakly. "This is only the beginning, Nicholas. Peace. Unity. We will achieve it, regardless of the cost." As Cox left the medical bay, his communicator chimed. It was Zaxor, his face grave despite their victory. "Captain, I'm afraid our troubles are not nearly finished. Meet me on Earth immediately. There are developments you need to be aware of." Admiral Nicholas Cox stood at the viewport of Starbase 1, his eyes fixed on the scarred surface of Earth below. The burns from orbital bombardment were still visible, stark reminders of how close humanity had come to extinction. "Admiral, the Vulcan delegation has arrived," his aide reported. Cox nodded, straightening his uniform. "Show them in." The doors slid open, revealing Ambassador Solek and his entourage. Cox extended his hand in the traditional human greeting, noting the slight hesitation before the Vulcan reciprocated. "Ambassador, welcome to Earth." Solek inclined his head. "Admiral, we are here to discuss the implementation of shared technology protocols as outlined in the Galactic Alliance Charter." Cox gestured to the conference table. "Of course, please, be seated." As they settled into their chairs, Cox couldn't help but notice the tension in the room. The alliance was young, fragile. Every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. "Before we begin," Solek said, "there is the matter of the Andorian mining rights in the Tau Ceti system." Cox suppressed a sigh. Another complication. "I was under the impression that had been purposed." "It has not," Solek replied coolly. "The Andorians claim the humans promised them exclusive rights, while the Tellarites insist on open access." A chime interrupted them. Cox tapped his communicator. "Go ahead." "Admiral," came the urgent voice of his security chief. "We've lost contact with Outpost 47 near the Romulan neutral zone. Last transmission indicated possible hostiles in the area." Cox's lips pursed. "Acknowledged. Dispatch the USS Intrepid to investigate." He turned back to the Vulcans, their faces impassive. "My apologies, Ambassador. Where were we?" As the meeting dragged on, Cox found his mind wandering to the warning Zaxor had given him months ago. The old Vulcan's words echoed in his mind. "This peace is built on shifting sands, Nicholas. We must remain vigilant." Later that evening, Cox made his way to a nondescript apartment in the outskirts of San Francisco. He knocked twice, paused, then 3 more times. The door opened, revealing Zaxor's weathered face. "Come in quickly," he said, ushering Cox inside. The small room was cluttered with data pads and holographic displays. Zaxor gestured to a star chart. "We've detected unusual energy signatures in these sectors. It could be nothing, but..." "But you don't believe in coincidences," Cox finished. Zaxor nodded grimly. "The Klingons are up to something. Our sources indicate they're experimenting with bioweapons." Cox ran a hand through his graying hair. If that's true, it could shatter the alliance. Which is precisely why we must act, Zaxor said, his eyes intense. I have a plan, but you're not going to like it. As Zaxor outlined his proposal, Cox felt a growing sense of unease. The idea of surrendering all of Earth's advanced weapons technology to Vulcan custody seemed like madness. It's too risky, Cox argued. What if it falls into the wrong hands? Zaxor's expression was unreadable. Trust me, Nicholas, there are safeguards in place. Before Cox could press further, his communicator chirped. Admiral, urgent message from Starfleet Command. You're needed immediately. Cox stood, conflicted. We'll continue this discussion later, he told Zaxor. As he left the apartment, Cox couldn't shake the feeling that events were spiraling out of his control. The fragile peace they'd fought so hard for seemed to be slipping through his fingers like stardust. Little did he know, in a hidden bunker deep beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Isaac Novak was having a very different conversation. You understand what must be done? The shadowy figure on the monitor asked. Novak's face was a mask of tenacity. I do. For the sake of humanity's survival, I'll do whatever it takes. The Romulan agent nodded approvingly. Good. We'll be in touch with further instructions. As the transmission ended, Novak stared at his reflection in the darkened screen. The man looking back at him was a stranger, hollowed out by guilt and fear. Computer, he said quietly, delete all records of this communication. The seeds of betrayal had been sown. As Cox raced back to Starfleet headquarters, unaware of the forces aligning against him, the galaxy teetered on the brink of chaos once more.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.